Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. Pakistan says India's admission of using FATF against Islamabad vindicates its stance on the matter. The Foreign Office says the Indian Foreign Minister's statement exposed Delhi's true colors and duplicit role. And the statement adds that India has left no stone unturned in casting doubts on Pakistan's progress. Foreign missions in Kabul have called on the Taliban to halt their military offensive on Eid al-Adha. In a joint statement, 15 diplomatic missions and the NATO representative said the Taliban should lay their weapons for good and show the world their commitment to peace. Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi says there is no need for the presence of foreign forces on Iraqi soil. In an interview, al-Kadhimi said his upcoming visit to the United States is aimed at pushing for a pullout. The premier said it is Baghdad's responsibility to protect Iraq's sovereignty and foreign diplomatic missions. Brazil has registered more than 900 daily COVID-19 deaths and over 34,000 new cases. Australian authorities are extending the lockdown in Victoria State as the country battles the Delta variant. Pakistan has reported 30 deaths and more than 2,400 cases in the last 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4 million lives and infected over 190 million others. For more news in detail, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Pakistan says India's admission of using FATF against Islamabad vindicates its stance on the matter. The Foreign Office says the Indian Foreign Minister's statement exposed Delhi's true colors and duplicit role.
In a statement, the Foreign Office said Pakistan has been sincerely engaged with FATF during the implementation of the action plan. Islamabad said Delhi has left no stone unturned in casting doubts on Islamabad's progress through disgraceful means. The Foreign Office added Pakistan is considering approaching the financial watchdog for appropriate action in the matter. The statement said that following the recent confession by the Indian government, India's credentials for assessing Pakistan in FATF as co-chair of the joint group, or for that matter, any other country, are subject to questions. The Foreign Office said Pakistan's immense progress has been acknowledged by the watchdog. Last month, FATF retained Pakistan in the grey list despite complying with 26 out of 27 requirements. But many Indian companies that were found supplying weapons to ISIS have skipped the eyes of the watchdog. As per a US Treasury study, India is one of the largest countries to move money abroad through illegal means.
For more on this, we are joined by Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson, Mr. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry. Thank you so much for speaking to Indus News, Mr. Chaudhry. Now, Islamabad has been drawing international attention over India's global propaganda against Pakistan. The EU Disinfo Lab was a major proof of that. How do you believe the international community and forums should react to this blatant admission of malice and propaganda by the Indian Foreign Minister?
Pakistan has always been sensitizing the international community about India's propaganda against Pakistan. Now, the recent statement by the Indian External Affairs Minister is actually a confession of politicizing FATF against Pakistan by India. The Indian statement, we believe, vindicates Pakistan's long-standing position that India is playing a negative role within the framework of FATF. Pakistan has always been highlighting to the international community that FATF, which is a technical forum, is being politicized by India. Now, the Indian External Affairs Minister's statement, we believe, further corroborates our position on this. Pakistan has been exposing India's negative role to the international community in the past, and we will continue doing that in future also. We also are considering approaching FATF president for an appropriate action in this matter.
Mr. Chaudhry, we now know that Pakistan has decided to approach the FATF president in this regard. Can you please share the details regarding that with us?
Yes, India is currently the co-chair of the group that assesses Pakistan's progress within the FATF. Now, given India's negative role and confession by the Indian External Affairs Minister that they've been deliberately using this technical forum, for their political goals, so we believe that we have a very strong case taking it up with the FATF and then also questioning India's credentials for assessing Pakistan in the FATF as co-chair of the joint group. And we also believe that the progress made by Pakistan on anti-money laundering, on countering financing for terrorism domain demonstrated by Pakistan through concrete, tangible and verifiable actions has been widely acknowledged by the international community, and within the FATF also there is a wider acknowledgement and appreciation of Pakistan's efforts. We are resolved to sustain this momentum and trajectory, and we believe that these actions that Pakistan is taking, it's in Pakistan's own interest, and also this leads to Pakistan's fulfillment of its international obligations and commitments. We will continue doing that, but at the same time, we will also continue exposing India's own agenda within the FATF.
Mr. Chaudhry, there is ample proof of India's violations of the FATF code, including a U.S. Treasury Department study that shows India as one of the top countries that moves money secretly through illegal means worldwide. Why has this not grabbed the FATF's attention?
We believe, yes, you are absolutely right. India's role in the money laundering also, and then a violation of global standards, that also needs to be taken into account, and India needs to be held accountable for that. As you are aware, within the framework of FATF, all countries are required to undergo an evaluation process, and we believe that India must also be held accountable for its weaknesses within the anti-money laundering framework and countering for financing terrorism framework.
Mr. Chaudhry, so do you believe that these disparities bring the FATF's global credibility and effectivity into question?
We believe that it's a technical forum and it must be used for only technical reasons and no politicization. Pakistan has been highlighting this aspect, and we've been sensitizing the international community that this forum is being politicized. So we believe it's a technical forum and it needs to be used accordingly.
Mr. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. And for more on this, we are also joined by former Ambassador Mr. Asif Durrani. Thank you so much for speaking to Indus News, Mr. Durrani. Now, there has been much global criticism of the FATF as it appears to be ignoring otherwise blatant violation of its code by many other countries. Indian companies, for example, were found supplying weapons to ISIS have skipped the eyes of the FATF. How these double standards are impacting the credibility of the FATF?
Well, I think it does. It's a big question mark on the credibility of the FATF administration, how they perceive of the terrorist financing and the actions which Pakistan had taken. Out of 27 conditionalities, Pakistan did fulfill 26. So it is yet to be seen, because I think Foreign Office has taken up the issue with the FATF administration, and hopefully this issue is going to be on the agenda, And if I recall correctly, this question was put when the FATF chairman, he had in the press conference ruled that out of 27, Pakistan has fulfilled 26. But on the issue of taking into account those so-called terrorist organization people, when it was asked that it was all a political question and how can you justify that, so he was speechless. So I think there'll be a lot of activity is likely to take place soon. And in that respect, I think one way, the silver lining is that it would also expose the Indian machinations, which have now been proven by External Affairs Minister Jaishankar's admission yesterday while briefing the BJP members of parliament that it was India which actually did the machination and blocked Pakistan's qualification from grey list to white list.
Mr. Durrani, India's anti-Pakistan propaganda in the international arena at the international forums was always suspected. How can Pakistan use this open confession by the top Indian diplomat to shape global opinion in support of Pakistan's stance?
India will be exposed on that. I think when it comes to raising or whatever machinations India has been doing against Pakistan, then Pakistan has always been in the forefront, whether it is at the UN level or at the regional level. So I think I'm pretty sure that this will be raised.
Mr. Durrani, how does this confession by S. Jaishankar reflect on India's claims of being honest in mending ties with Pakistan? Does this not reflect a two-faced approach?
It does. I mean, India, it's not something new. India has been doing that. Just take the example of the Kashmir dispute. Right from, the beginning, when it was India which took the matter to the United Nations. When it was agreed that the plebiscite would be held, India dragged its feet. Now, after 2 years ago, they in fact revoked Article 370 and 35A, which gave special status to the occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, so they have been in fact cooking their own broth and they have been eating it too. So this is what has been happening during the past 7 decades. So the double-faced policy which India has been running throughout, especially with regard to Pakistan, is in fact has exposed. And if you recall, the European info labs, which they exposed India's whole racket they have been running to malign Pakistan. So that has been exposed. Pakistan made a dossier against India's machinations, about India's machinations against Pakistan. Those are very much available with the international community, especially the major capitals. So it's a game which is on, and I think both sides are playing, and hopefully a final would come very soon.
Mr. Asif Durrani, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now moving on, Indian forces have martyred 2 more civilians in occupied Kashmir Shopian district. The Kashmiris were targeted during an operation in the Sadiq Khan area. Meanwhile, authorities have suspended internet services in the region. More than 400 civilians have been martyred since New Delhi revoked Kashmir statehood in August 2019. The Taliban say they did not suggest or agree to any ceasefire during the Doha talks. This clarification comes after the latest rounds of discussions ended without any breakthrough. However, in a joint statement, Taliban and Afghan negotiators pledged to meet again and expedite the peace process. Afghan chief negotiator Abdullah said the top priority of his delegation is to reduce violence. In a series of tweets, Taliban spokesperson Muhammad Naim said all sides have agreed on the need to prevent civilian casualties. Earlier, Taliban leader Hibayatullah Akhundzada said he favors a political settlement despite military gains. For more on this, we are joined by Brigadier Imran Malik, retired, speaking to us from Lahore. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Mr. Malik, what do you believe are the key sticking points standing in the way of a political settlement between the Taliban and the Kabul government?
I think the most major or the most dominant sticking point is the choice between having an Islamic Emirate or an Islamic Republic in Afghanistan. The Taliban are adamant on having an Islamic Emirate because they feel that they've been fighting for such a system for the last more than 20 years now, if we do not include the fight against the Soviet Union. While the National Unity Government would prefer an Islamic Republic as supported by the West mostly. So this perhaps will decide, whichever way they go, that will decide the character of the next government in Kabul, and also its relations with the rest of the world. And I think this is perhaps the key, the most cardinal point, which will actually either make or break this entire intra-Afghan dialogue for this peace process. And this perhaps is one of the most serious sticking points. The other one could be the distribution of power. If they, let's say, the best solution is they form a government through a peace process and they do not fight over it, and then if they form a government, how will they distribute power? That again will be a very serious point to cover. And how do they then distribute the various countries and all to all the different people? And we must not forget one thing, that what will then be the future of the current president, Ashraf Ghani, Abdullah, people like Hanif Atmar, people like Amrullah Saleh, all those who've been so aggressively involved in fighting the Taliban. So how will they decide their future then? So their future again will become a very sticking point. So I think if we just stick to these 3 points, otherwise there could be a lot more, then the character of the next government, whether Islamic Emirate or Republic, the coalition and the distribution of power, and the future of the current National Unity Government personnel. These 3 would clearly be the most difficult questions that they need to answer and find solutions to.
Mr. Malik, with this much hype around the intra-Afghan talks ending inconclusively, is all hope lost for a peaceful settlement in Afghanistan?
No, I don't think so that we can ever lose hope, because if we start losing hope, then obviously there'll be no solution to all these critical issues that beset all of us. I think if we have a look at the various processes that we've gone through as far as the intra-Afghan dialogue is concerned or the peace process is concerned, we've had a succession of failures. Let us have a look at the Doha peace process, the MOSQUE process, the Beijing process, the Istanbul process, which never took off, the Islamabad process, which was duly sabotaged by President Ashraf Ghani and his colleagues. And now we have the Doha process also again, which what the news tells us right now is remains inconclusive again. So the point is that unless those sticking points that we've spoken of earlier, unless they are resolved, there is not likely to be a very much improvement or a steady improvement in this peace process. However, hope is not lost. Pakistan must revive the Islamabad process all over once again and make an effort. Because we must not forget that creating a government through the peace process is the best solution overall. The other 2 are basically very destructive ones. One is that the Taliban run over Kabul and claim government. Or the other one, even worse one, is that they run over and claim a government in Kabul, and then there is a war that ensues. And then that would lead Afghanistan to and the region, I would say, to turmoil and support. And once Afghanistan, if it balkanizes, the entire region will go into a tailspin. So I think hope should not be lost, and Pakistan, who has done so much to bring peace to Afghanistan, must continue its efforts and try to revive the Islamabad process.
Mr. Malik, now losing more ground to the Taliban every day with no ceasefire in sight, what is the future of Ashraf Ghani's government?
I think Ashraf Ghani has probably read the writing on the wall. what he said in his speech in Uzbekistan about Pakistan and in the presence of our Prime Minister clearly reflected his frustration over the entire situation in Afghanistan. He is clearly losing control of that country, and he looked at Pakistan to be the scapegoat on which he can lay all the blame. And we also must not forget that the intelligence of the United States also not given this Afghan government more than 6 months to survive. So I think President Ashraf Ghani has seen the writing on the wall, and his recent of withdrawing the ambassador from Islamabad clearly reflects his frustration and his total bewilderment and panic at losing power. And I think that it is to his benefit, to the benefit of the entire Afghan nation and to the benefit of the entire region, that he comes to a reasonable and a peaceful solution with the Afghan Taliban. Else, he will ruin a situation which is already bad enough. And once it gets out of control, that at this moment, there is no stabilizing force available in Afghanistan. Turmoil, unrest, unmanaged chaos, and destabilization will clearly lead to balkanization. And that will be the end of Afghanistan as we see it today, and will cause immense trouble for the rest of the region as well.
Brigadier Imran Malik, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. We now are joined by Major General Ijaz Avan speaking to us. Now, welcome, first of all. And Mr. Avan, do you believe the outcome of the intra-Afghan talks would have been different had the Taliban not won such a large percentage of Afghanistan? Mr. Avan, do you believe the outcome of the intra-Afghan talks would have been different had the Taliban not won such a large percentage of the Afghanistan? Major General Ijaz Avan, is my voice audible to you?
Yes, you are audible, but there is an overlap of another program that somebody is talking. वो उर्दू में बात कर रहे हैं, प्रोग्राम में खुदा हाफिज कर रहे हैं. I am hearing them and I am hearing you. I don't know whom to answer.
All right, we're just having some technical difficulties. We're just about to move further. Is my voice audible to you now?
You are audible, there is no doubt, but somebody is talking in Urdu language and I can overhear them. I don't know what's going on.
All right. Can you hear me now? Is the audio situation better?
Now it's okay. Yes.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, General, do you believe the outcome of the intra-Afghan talks would have been different had the Taliban not won such a large percentage of Afghanistan?
Well, I think certainly it would have been different if American had engaged them before withdrawal. But since they engaged with irresponsible attitude and they did not engage the Taliban for peace dialogue or intra-Afghan dialogue, rather they legitimized their position and gave them the weightage probably they deserved, yet asked the guarantee for non-use of Afghan soil for international terrorism from the Taliban. And they promised to release their prisoners, they promised them delisting from the United Nations terrorist list. So when they were given so much of weightage before withdrawal and no effort was made by the American for intra-Afghan dialogue, then of course now it is difficult. But had it been done prior to all these commitments, certainly the outcome would have been different and it would have been far easier to arrive at an Afghan-owned, Afghan-led settlement.
Mr. Avan, now after the inconclusive end of these talks is a prelude to an all-out civil war, or would the regional countries now assume a bigger role in facilitating a settlement?
Well, certainly the role of regional countries is very important right from the beginning, and we had been talking to the American colleagues and friends. We have been advising them that you are fighting against the geography. So when you come in the region from far off lands and then you start fighting with the region, you do not take the regional countries on board to find a political or negotiated settlement. then that much difficulties American had faced, and they had invited, in fact, all this trouble. So if American did not take them on board at that time, now I think is the time, the power vacuum that has been created, that can be very well filled by the regional countries, because region shares the dividends of peace and political settlement in Afghanistan, and dividends for the trade that it would generate. So I think regional countries, if they all sit together, they don't have favorites, and they all put some kind of exercise. Each one of them exercises some leverage on the Afghan faction, one or the other. So if they talk to them and they convince them, I think regional countries can help them establish peace and intra-Afghan dialogue, take them to success.
Now, Mr. Avan, as we know, Afghanistan has threatened more than to call Indian military support to combat the rapidly advancing Taliban. Would the other regional countries be comfortable with that?
Well, I think I would be too happy as a soldier if India makes this mistake and puts in boots on ground. I think it is beyond their capacity. They cannot do it. And of course, it would not be to the liking of Pakistan. And of course, it would not be to the liking of even the Afghan Taliban. They know what role India had been playing, and the way it utilizes the mainland or the soil of Afghanistan against the neighboring countries, particularly Pakistan and Pakistan-China strategic cooperation. So this would cut across the agreement that was made between Taliban and the American, because Taliban had promised that Afghan mainland will not be allowed to be used by anyone for against the interest of the neighboring countries or the US or US allies. So if they stick to that particular commitment, then I think India would not like to venture into it. India is only trying to capitalize on the context and wishes to put boots on ground so that Afghan soil can be used against Pakistan. So in short, Pakistan would not be happy, but I as a person would like India to come in and taste the medicine, have the taste of this medicine what cooks in Afghanistan.
Jazavan, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now moving on, Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi says there is no need for the presence of foreign forces on Iraqi soil. In an interview, al-Kadhimi said his upcoming visit to the United States is aimed at pushing for a pullout. He said the visit also seeks to regulate bilateral ties strained after multiple attacks on U.S. assets in Iraq. The premier said it is Baghdad's responsibility to protect Iraq's sovereignty and foreign diplomatic missions. Al-Kadhimi also said negotiations between the United States and Iran will impact the region, but he hoped that Iraq will not be an arena for their conflict. Meanwhile, the spokesperson of the international coalition in Iraq, Colonel Wayne Morodo, says they will continue to crush the ISIS. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Pakistan, at least 29 people have died and 41 others injured when a bus collided with a trailer in Dera Ghazi Khan. Authorities say many of the injured are in critical condition and the death toll may rise. The bus was traveling to Rajanpur from Sialkot when it lost control due to overspeeding. Interior Minister Sheikh Rashid has expressed sorrow over the deaths. The new coronavirus has claimed 30 more lives in Pakistan in the past 24 hours. The health ministry says over 2,400 people tested positive overnight. It said the nationwide tally of fatalities has surpassed 22,800. Pakistan has reported over 991,000 cases and more than 920,000 recoveries so far. Meanwhile, the number of active cases is approaching 49,000. More than 2,500 of them are critical. Officials said the country's positivity rate has declined to 4.95%. Brazil has registered more than 900 daily COVID-19 deaths and over 34,000 new cases. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4 million lives and infected over 190 million others. More in this report.
Slow vaccination drives and the aggressive Delta variant are fueling one of the worst coronavirus outbreaks globally. France has reported over 10,000 new cases for the third consecutive day. However, England has lifted all pandemic restrictions in a step condemned by the scientists and opposition parties as a dangerous leap into the unknown. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, however, urged the British public to be cautious.
But I really do urge everybody to stick with the programme and take the appropriate course of action when you're asked to do so by NHS Test and Trace. And the reason for that is we're going tomorrow into step 4. We're doing a big opening up. And that's quite right. If we don't do it now, then we'll be opening up in the autumn, the winter months, when the virus has the advantage of the cold weather. We lose the precious fire break that we get with the school holidays. If we don't do it now, we've got to ask ourselves, when will we ever do it? So this is the right moment, but we've got to do it cautiously. We've got to remember that this virus is sadly still out there.
South Korea's anti-piracy vessel in the Gulf of Aden has recorded one of the military's biggest clusters of infections. More than 80% of personnel on board have tested positive. Meanwhile, Moscow city residents welcomed the easing of restrictions.
It's a bit difficult with QR codes. I just did the second round of the vaccine and I still haven't received my QR code. I tried it today with the government services website and asked them where is my code, as I have received my second dose now. But my code isn't here yet, as I just got the second dose 2 days ago. But of course the cancellation of this requirement is a good thing.
Thailand has reported the highest daily rise in infections for the 4th straight day as Vietnam has announced new restrictions on movement in 16 southern provinces for 2 weeks. Australia too is extending the lockdown in the Victoria state as the country battles the Delta variant.
In Saudi Arabia, thousands of Muslims performing the annual HAJJ pilgrimage have gathered on Mount Arafat. They atoned for their sins and expressed hopes for peace and an end to the COVID-19 pandemic. Later, they offered combined prayers and attended the Hajj sermon. After sunset, the pilgrims will spend the night at Muzdalifah. Saudi Arabia has barred worshippers from abroad for a second year running due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Only 60,000 fully vaccinated Saudi citizens and residents are allowed to perform Hajj this year. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has condemned the Israeli raid at the Al-AQSA mosque. It said frequent attacks on the site are part of Israel's attempt to change the status quo in Jerusalem. In a statement, the bloc urged the international community to take action and stop the violence. The Palestinian Authority has called the Jewish acts provocative and a threat to security and stability. Meanwhile, Israeli settlers assaulted Palestinians, including a senior citizen in Hebron city. Nepal's new Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Dubba has won a vote of confidence in the parliament. Parliament Speaker Agni Sabkota says Dubba won 165 votes, exceeding the 136 required, with 83 against him. Dubba faced the vote as a legal requirement after being selected to succeed ousted Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. Oli, who had been in power for 3 years, was ousted for breaching the constitution by dissolving the parliament. Dubba will head a coalition with former Maoist rebels and a party representing a minority group. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan congratulated Dubba on his victory and hoped for better bilateral ties. China has dismissed claims that UNESCO deliberations on the Great Barrier Reef are political. The World Heritage Body is pushing ahead with plans to classify the site as endangered. President of the 44th session, China's Tian Xinjun, said the move had nothing to do with bilateral tensions. The Vice Minister of Education objected to what he called baseless allegations. He said the recommendation is based on the reports and data provided by Australia. The proposal will be on the agenda at the 44th session in the Chinese city of Fuzhou on Friday. An earthquake of magnitude 5.7 struck Fars province in southern Iran. Officials say the quake was centered near the town of Khisit. Local authorities say search and rescue teams have been dispatched to the area. However, said that there are no immediate reports of casualties. Meanwhile, some buildings were damaged in the quake. A 3.8 magnitude aftershock is also reported to have hit Khishat. The quake was also felt in neighboring Iraq in the southern city of Basra. In the United States, gusty winds and hot weather continue to fan dozens of wildfires across Oregon, California, and other western states. Officials say weather factors are negative for firefighters and positive for the fires. More in this report.
In the face of record-breaking heat, 70 major active wildfires have burned more than 1 million acres in 12 U.S. states. The country's largest fire in Oregon is pushing to the north and east after scorching 280,000 acres. The bootleg fire grew to more than 1,200 square kilometers, an area about the size of Los Angeles. More than 2,000 firefighters are battling the blaze, which is 22% contained so far. The flames have burnt at least 67 homes and 100 outbuildings while threatening thousands more. Meanwhile, California's largest fire, Dixie, has burnt over 59 square kilometers and is only 15% contained yet. A fast-moving Tamarack fire also engulfed over 21,000 acres along the state's border with Nevada. Up north in Canada, fire crews continue to battle over 300 active wildfires in British Columbia, with the primary focus on controlling a 5,000-hectare fire.
In the Russian Serbia's permafrost zone, smoke has clouded the sky as 22 new wildfires emerged in an area of 4,500 hectares. Officials say the flames are spreading rapidly amid unpredictable gusts of wind. Smoke from 187 forest fires is currently covering 51 residential areas in the Siberian Yakutia region. In a statement, the emergency ministry said more than 2,200 firefighters are working in the area. Operations at the local airport and navigation on the nearby Lena River were suspended. American billionaire Jeff Bezos plans to make history with the world's first unpiloted suborbital flight tomorrow. The flight with an all-civilian 4-person crew is scheduled to launch from a West Texas site. Bezos will join the crew on the 11-minute ride to the edge of space in his company's Blue Origin's New Shepard spacecraft. It is a 60-foot-tall, fully autonomous rocket and capsule combo and cannot be piloted from the inside. Last Sunday, British billionaire Richard Branson became the first person to ride into space on his own ship. China has successfully launched a new remote sensing satellite group into orbit. This is the 10th group belonging to the Yagon 30 family. The Long March 2C carrier rocket blasted off from the Xinjiang Satellite Launch Center in Sichuan Province. The satellites will survey the electromagnetic environment and verify relevant technologies. Also aboard is Tianqi 15, which will serve as the Internet of Things data collection. The launch marks the 380th flight of the Long March rocket series. In South Africa, a pianist uses music to spread hope and love as the country rebuilds following the unrest. More in this report. Playing piano amid the debris, Jenny Bowes belts out songs including the South African national anthem. Protests broke out in the country after former President Jacob Zuma was jailed for contempt of court. The situation quickly escalated to looting and arson, in which more than 200 people were killed. Bowes says she had a feeling of profound sadness mixed with hope that prompted her to play the piano found there.
I sang it in faith. I sang it not just for me and our personal situation, but I sang it for the people in this facility, for the people of this province, for the people of this nation. Because, it says, God bless Africa.
For her, the saddest part of the devastation was that people lost only not material possessions, but treasured family heirlooms too. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. OPEC Plus ministers have agreed to boost oil supply after the UAE and Saudi Arabia reached a compromise. They aim to phase out 5.8 million barrels per day of production cuts by September 2022. In a statement, OPEC said coordinated increases in oil supply from the group will begin in August. Overall production will increase by 400,000 barrels per day every month from that onward. The oil cartel would then assess market developments and participating countries' performances in December. According to the statement, OPEC Plus also agreed on higher output quotas from May 2022 for several members. European stocks have tumbled as the markets digest drop in oil prices after OPEC Plus announcement regarding increasing oil production. Italy's FTSE MIB is leading the losses, plunging over 2.5%. The CAC 40 in Paris has also dropped over 2%. Frankfurt's DAX, the Pan-European Stock 600, and London's FTSE have shed nearly 2% as well. Earlier, Asian stocks also traded lower.
Thank you. We're going to start with Abu Dhabi, where the weather is expected to be hot, with temperatures rising to 40 degrees Celsius, while in Amsterdam, the weather is partially sunny with temperatures at 22. If we head to Ankara, the weather is extremely hot with temperatures at 40 degrees Celsius. Moving down under to Auckland, the temperature is chilly at 16 degrees Celsius, with clouds overhead. Now, if you are traveling to Bangkok, the clouds will be overhead. Temperatures there will be around 30 degrees Celsius. While in Beijing, there is cloudy weather in the forecast with temperatures at 29. While Beirut will experience mostly sunny weather with temperatures at 30 degrees Celsius. Berliners will experience a sunny day with temperatures at 20 degrees Celsius. Now, heading to Cairo, the hot sun will be excruciating with 39 degrees Celsius. Down under in Canberra, the cloudy weather is keeping things chilly at 8 degrees Celsius. Now, in Islamabad, the clouds are there and heavy rain is expected with temperatures rising to 30 degrees Celsius. While in Jakarta, the temperatures are steady at 32 degrees Celsius with clouds overhead. That's all for now. Back to you.
For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.